Welcome to Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music with your host, multi-award-winning music producer, Eddie Kilroy. And now, here's your host, Eddie Kilroy.
Hey, how are you? Welcome to another edition of Kilroy's Outlaws, Legends, and Behind the Music. We're going to talk about something a little bit different than a lot of people don't know or don't care, maybe. We know a lot of our entertainers came from Texas, Oklahoma, and you've got that bunch out at Bakersfield in California that have done so well, Buck and the Bunch, and nobody ever mentions Louisiana. Boy, a lot of talent has come out of Louisiana. I spent time there as a youth in high school, so I had friends there, knew a lot of things, went to a lot of clubs there, and heard a lot of Cajun music, and heard a lot of country music. I'm going to run down some acts that originally from Louisiana that had success. Some of them never moved to Nashville. A few of them didn't. Most of them want to stay home and eat crawfish. I don't blame them. And you know, everybody that knows anything about Louisiana knows that in that one state, it's like having three states. You've got the southeast part of Louisiana, which is Cajun country for sure. And then you've got the middle part that's wondering whether they want to be Cajun or whether they want to be something else. And then you go up north, and the folks there in Louisiana are more like East Texas or perhaps Arkansas. But I was always drawn to the Cajun culture and went to school for a few years in Jennings, Louisiana, which isn't very far from being right there in the heart of Cajun country, in New Iberia, Lafayette, those places, you know. And I knew a lot of people there and had a lot of friends there and saw the music industry in Louisiana and saw the great nightclubs they had. The one that's pretty funny to me is in Gaydon, Louisiana. That's, maybe 20 miles from Jennings, Louisiana. They had a pole, big honky-tonk there in Cajun music, and they had a telephone pole out in the middle of the parking lot and a lot of chains on it. And I asked them what that was when I first got there. I didn't know what it was. And that's when people would start fighting and get rowdy. They would chain them to that post until the sheriff's department from that parish would have enough to come merit getting them and having a carload of people. They chained them to the post, called the police when they had a post full, and the police would come and get them. But getting back to the music, I heard a lot of Cajun music there, and that was good. I was thinking of the ones that were from Louisiana that ended up in country music. Some were never in Cajun music, incidentally. Some were in country music while they were in Louisiana and starting. But we're going to have fun today because I'm refreshing my memory of a lot of friends, you know. Jimmy Newman, he comes to mind immediately. The Alligator Man had a lot of hits. He had a lot of country hits. And he was born in Mamou, Big Mamou, Louisiana. Wow. Gosh, that song, Big Mamou, has been played 100 times, but he was born in that town. He got up to Nashville way back in 1953, one of the first there, and got on the Grand Ole Opry eventually and became a big Opry star and a great friend of mine. I'll tell you, before I go on, I've got to tell you the story. Everybody has a story about their first guitar. Well, I had a first guitar, and Jimmy Newman was working often at the River Club in Mermentau, Louisiana, which is maybe 7 or 8 miles from Jennings, where I was going to school. And he had some local hits that were really big, Blue Darling, Cry Cry Darling. And I knew those songs, but I didn't know all the chords. I was kind of self-taught on a guitar. So I would go to this club, the River Club, and I would stand in front of the stage when Jimmy Newman was playing. And when he would get to a line on that particular song that I was trying to learn, I would watch where he was putting his fingers. I didn't know he was making like a D chord. I just knew that was the right place to put your fingers when you were singing that song. And then when he'd go on a little bit, I'd say, oh, yeah, he's going to a G chord. I knew how to find those chords, but I didn't know what to call them. So that's where I started it. Make a long story short, many, many years go by. I told you he was in Nashville in 53. I went there in the 60s. I was there 4 decades. And Jimmy became a very good friend. But the amazing thing is he remembered the little guy that stood in front of the stand in the River Club, in front of the bandstand, and watched him play. He said, I remember you. He said, you used to stand in front of me at the River Club. I said, I sure did. And he's wonderful. He's gone now, of course. And he was married to a wonderful lady, Miss May. And Miss May could cook some Cajun food. And Jimmy would say, come out to the house, Miss May's cooking. And I would go out there. And he had a bunch of Appaloosa horses, you know, the kind the Indians rode so they'd be mad when they got to the fight. That's an old story. But Jimmy was one of the first to leave Louisiana and have success in Nashville. Webb Pierce, Webb was from West Monroe. That's kind of in that middle part of Louisiana I was talking about. And he came up to Nashville back in 52, I think, from the Louisiana Hayride to Shreveport, and had a lot of success. I mean, Webb was a superstar in that era, okay? I didn't particularly care for some of the songs. Some of them I learned and I played in my band, but all of them were not really good. But the big one, In the Jailhouse Now and Slowly, and some of those hits that Webb had, I thought was really good, you know, so I would use those. Oh, and now we get to my man. The guy that was my big brother, the guy that was my mentor in Nashville. Would I have been successful without the endorsement of Fair and Young? I don't know. But I was blessed to have his endorsement, and that's back when they were saying you don't have a chance in Nashville unless Fair and Young says you're an okay guy. Well, apparently he said I was an okay guy because between Fair and endorsing me and God blessing me, I did a lot of things there that I'm really, really grateful for. Fair and Young, from Shreveport, Louisiana, raised on a dairy farm there, told me he doesn't even like to drink milk. He milked too many cows. Let's talk about another couple of guys here. Rusty and Doug Kershaw, two brothers, born on a houseboat in the swamp in Louisiana, not too far from, it was in a place called Teal Ridge. Nobody knows where Teal Ridge is. That's kind of a crossing of a river where that riverboat was. He was born on that boat. That's not too far from Cameron, Louisiana, but you talk about being in Cajun country. You're deep in the heart of Cajun country where crawfish, they rule. I mean, that's the whole deal. And then they fish and make a living. He had a brother, Rusty Kershaw. His real name was Russell. And we went to school together. He was a great guitar player. Unfortunately, when they arrived in Nashville, Chet Atkins took Rusty under his wing because he could play really fantastic guitar. And Chet saw the future of him playing guitar. The unfortunate part is he got heavy duty into drugs. I mean, drugs were really not the big scene in Nashville in that era, but somehow or another he got into them. And he got into them so bad that when he would do a session, Chet would call him to play on a session, and he couldn't play. So Chet would just turn him down just so he could make the session money, but he never used the guitar because it was too bad. Where earlier he was like featuring his guitar. And eventually Russell died, which he recorded under the name of Rusty and Doug Kershaw. They had that huge record called Louisiana Man, if you remember that. I know you do. And Hank Jr., oh, Lord, oh, Hank Jr., Hank's my buddy. Yep. Hank was, he came to Nashville at a very early age, not by choice, because he was born in Louisiana. Yep, he really was. Born in Shreveport, matter of fact. The reason he got to Nashville so early, 1947, is he was just a baby. And his daddy and his mama said, we're going to Nashville. You want to go? Well, he's not that long. He said, well, yeah, I'll go with you. So he went to Nashville. He's still in Tennessee, making him hits, you know, and recording, doing shows. Getting a little bit long in the tooth, but he can still rock them. I love Junior. He is really, really great, and we've had a lot of great times together. He stayed with me for a while there in Nashville. And rode horses with me. He loved horses. He got him a horse. Yep, sure did. And he became a great entertainer on his own and distanced himself from his father's music. It was really smart because when he first started, as you know, he went out doing all of his dad's songs, and he was just like a clone of his dad. And then all of a sudden he said, hey, I'm going to go be Hank Williams myself, not Hank Williams Jr., And he went out and started that whole new deal, had tons and tons of hits, and still rocking and doing well, living in Tennessee. But he came up, I was talking about the ones that came up from different parts of Louisiana into Nashville into country music. Louisiana was just loaded with talent. I mean, everywhere you went, they were playing Cajun music, they were playing country music. It was just a fun deal. The one thing from the few years that I spent in Louisiana, and people have asked me, how did you end up spending time in Louisiana when you're from Texas? Well, my father, I'll make this quick, my father had a large construction company, and when there were big jobs to do, he thought he had to go be there, though my brother, older brother, 12 years older than I, was absolutely, had all kinds of construction talent, and he could have done the job, but Dad said, no, I've got to be there to supervise it. So we'd end up in Louisiana for a while, then go back to Texas. But that was my experience in Louisiana, and I loved every minute of it. Two guys that I produced hits on. One, Jerry Lee Lewis. The other, Mickey Gilley. First cousins. They're from Faraday, Louisiana. However, let me tell you, Jerry Lee was born in Faraday. Mickey was born across the Mississippi River in Natchez, Mississippi. But he wasn't about that long when his mom and daddy took him back over to Faraday. So he claims to be a native of Faraday, Louisiana. Faraday, Louisiana, the little town there that produced 3 superstars. All of them superstars in their own genre. Went up Jerry Lee Lewis, Mickey Gilley, and Jimmy Lee Swaggart. All huge stars. Unfortunately, all of them are gone. Wow, Jimmy Lee died recently. Mickey died several years ago. I did his memorial up in Branson. Very dear friend of mine for many, many years, and we had a lot of hits on Playboy Records. Don't the Girls Get Prettier at Closing Time? Gilley's career record, we did that one. And I was friends with Mickey to the very end. So he is from Louisiana, okay? It was a mom and dad there. But they went over the river in Natchez, Mississippi. I don't know why they didn't stay home and give birth to Mickey in Faraday. But they said, no, we want to go to Natchez. Jerry stayed home and was born there in Faraday, Louisiana. I think Mickey's father had the one and only cab. He had the cab service in Faraday. I can't remember what the rest of them did. Jerry's dad was a moonshiner. Spent a little time. Elmo, I knew Elmo well. Good guy, kind of a wild old guy, but that's good. I went up with Jerry Lee Lewis, got his wildness from his daddy. Because Elmo could get a little bit wild for sure. But anyway, Jerry and Mickey Gilley never moved to Nashville. Neither did, which I thought was great. I told Mickey, I said, Mickey, don't move up here. Stay in Houston, actually Pasadena. And he said, well, maybe I should move to... I said, no. Don't move to Nashville. When you move to Nashville, you'll just be old Gilley, because you'll be seen every day on the 16th Avenue. There people get used to it. And if you stay away and then you come up every few months to record or whatever, do a TV show, the buzz will be all over Nashville. Gilley's in town. This is after he became a superstar. I said, Gilley's in town. So he said, okay, he never moved there to Nashville. So he had all the success and was able to stay home in Pasadena, which is Houston, as you know, and do well from there. Oh, man, I'm telling you what, Hank Jr., Hank Sr., all of them, man. I look back at all my friends, and of course I never knew Hank Sr. He passed away when I was just a young boy. But I felt like I knew him because I had friends that were really close to him, like Ray Price. When Hank and Audrey were getting a divorce, Hank moved in with Carl Smith and lived with Carl for about 6 months. And Carl, of course, fronted the Drifting Cowboys before that. And they were good friends, but I would sit back and listen to Hank stories from Ray Price on Hank, and I said, wow, did he really do that? I was just mesmerized by the stories of the legendary, and you talk about the biggest legend ever in country music, was Hank Williams, trust me. Oh, my gosh. But, there's some other things, too, and other people that came out of there that were really super talented. One of them, I think, as years go by, it progressed from the older crowd, the Jimmy Newmans and those type of people that had come up, the first ones to kind of open the door for the other people from Louisiana to slide on in. Tim McGraw, he comes to mind, from Louisiana. And I just was thinking, Tim McGraw has an interesting story. He did not realize until I think he was, I don't know, early 20s maybe, or maybe 20, 22. I'd be lying to you if I told you the exact year because I'm not sure about that. He found out that his biological father was Tug McGraw. Wow, one of the greatest baseball pitchers that ever lived. And they finally met when Tim McGraw was an adult. And they bonded, and they were friends until Tug McGraw died. But Tim McGraw had a lot of success, and he was born in Louisiana also. Kix Brooks. Wow, Brooks and Dunn. He was from Shreveport. A lot of them came out of Shreveport. They really did. That was kind of a music mecca in northern Louisiana. And then when he teamed up with the other guy, he had a lot of success. But, man, a lot of them were there. Kix Brooks and Tim McGraw, all of them there. So much talent. I keep going on and on because my mind is spinning trying to think of everybody that I know. And I'll miss a lot of them. You know, what's the greatest Cajun accordion player that ever lived? Joel Saunier from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Oh, man, what a talented guy. He's gone now, too. I'm talking about people that I'm getting a complex. I'm going to have to hang on for a while because my buddies are dying. And I'm looking for a big reunion in heaven, but I'm not ready for that reunion right now. But when the Lord calls me home, man, do I have some friends up there? I hope they're there. Well, Sammy Kershaw from Arcadia, Louisiana. Now, let me tell you about Sammy, what I know. My dear friend, which you've heard me speak of a lot, one of the great record producers, one of the great guys out of Nashville, Tennessee, originally from Georgia, been on the show with me, Harold Shedd. What a great human being, and what a talented cat, man. He really is. He saw the value of signing Sammy Kershaw. Well, my golfing buddy, a guy that I played golf with 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week, had the same golf addiction I had. He managed Sammy Kershaw. Now, I say this, you know the show, I tell it like it is. I don't try not to go ever to Wikipedia or look up anything on the internet. Everything is from what I knew, what I saw, what I heard. And some of what I heard, I take it for truth, especially from the guy I played golf with. I won't mention his name. There's no need in that, okay? But he was was managing Sammy Kershaw. And he took him to Harold Shedd. Harold was president of Mercury Records Nashville at the time. And as you know, has signed so many great acts. And he signed Sammy Kershaw. Well, my friend that I played golf with was managing him, as I said. We were playing golf one day. I don't remember what hole we were on. Maybe we were inside at the clubhouse drinking a beer before we went out to made the turn on 10. But I said, hey, what kind of guy is Sammy Kershaw? And he looked me dead in the eye. He said, Kilroy, he is the nastiest person I have ever known in my life. And I said, what do you mean nasty? I mean, he doesn't bathe? He curses? What do you mean nasty? He said he just has a nasty personality. He is just not a nice person. So that's all I know about Sammy Kershaw. I know that his longevity at Mercury Records, I don't know whether he got crossways with Harold Shedd or what, because Harold is the nicest guy in the world, or he wouldn't be one of my dearest friends. And I don't know why he dropped him or not, but whether it was attitude or he just quit selling some records or whatever, various things. So, excuse me. The other guy I want to mention is a big old boy. His name is Trace Atkins, and Trace was from a town I've never heard of. I thought I knew every town in Louisiana simply because I started rodeoing in high school rodeos in Louisiana, and every town had a high school rodeo. But this is Saripa, something like that. I didn't know where Trace was from. But when Trace moved to Nashville, I was living in College Grove, Tennessee, and he was moved out nearby, maybe a couple of miles away. He didn't move there. He bought property there and was going to build there. He already had a record deal. So I'm driving around. I've got an old man that was my buddy. And I said, let's go over and welcome Trace Atkins to the neighborhood, to this area. He said, all right, let's do that. And so we go over there, and Trace Atkins is moving some rocks or something, building an entrance, a driveway into his property. So I got out of the truck, and my old friend got out of the truck, and I went over there and I said, "Hello, my name's Eddie Kilroy, and I would like to welcome you to the neighborhood." And I forget what his response was, but he was a little bit nasty, meaning he was not warm and say, "Hey," I expect him to say, "Hey, thanks for coming by. Where do you live?" Da-da-da-da-da. And thanks for welcoming me. He would hardly talk. I mean, he was like extremely arrogant. And so we get back in the truck. And, Trace Atkins is a big boy. I don't know how big he is. He was bigger than I was, and I was 6'4" at the time, so I imagine he may be 6'6". I don't know, a big guy. And I asked my friend, he's an older guy at that time, I said, "What did you think about Trace Atkins?" He kind of waited a minute, and he said, "Sure does have big feet." I said, "That's what you got out of the visit?" He said, "Yeah, I never saw big feet that way." Anyway, that was Trace Atkins. Another guy, he's a good guy, Joe Stampley. Wow, a lot of hits. Spring Hills, Louisiana. He got up to Nashville and started making hit records right off the bat. Soulful cat. I mean, he really is. He started singing that soul music down in Louisiana, which a lot of that was a lot of good feeling. Louisiana music and artists from there always had feeling, whether they were doing Cajun music or whether they were doing American music or what have you. They had a lot of feeling in it, and Joe Stampley really had a lot of soul, and still does. Joe's still alive as far as I know. I saw him, well, I started to say the other day, but good grief, it's probably been 20 years ago. But he was Joe Stampley. We had dinner in someplace in East Texas. I can't remember that either. Eddie Raven, boy, he's so many hits. I've got Mexico. I've got this. I've got that. Eddie Raven had a lot of hits. He was from Lafayette. And he would come to my Playboy offices when I was president of Playboy. And now a lot of people get confused about that, okay? Playboy was not the Playboy magazine, okay? It was owned by Playboy magazine and Hugh Hefner, but it was a separate identity. And we were kind of on our own, but it was Playboy had the bunny on the label. If you've ever seen a Gilly record or a Bobby Borchers, any of them, you recognize the Playboy logo on that deal. So Eddie knew that I spent a lot of time with him. I knew him in Louisiana. And he would come up, and he was always an upbeat guy, wrote a ton of hits, had about, I bet Eddie, off the top of my head now, 15, maybe 10, 12, 15 top 10 records of his own. Then he wrote a lot of hits, too. He was a good writer and did a lot. But Eddie it was always a joy. When I would see him come in, we'd sit down and we'd visit, and we'd swap stories about Louisiana, about Nashville, about songs, about this, like music people do. We never run out of things to talk about. But had word from Jim Isabel, a session player in Nashville, that he had gone to a birthday party for someone, and Eddie Raven was there and said that he was pretty advanced in that terrible disease called Parkinson's. I did not know that Eddie was suffering from Parkinson's. I need to call him and visit with him and tell him I love him because that's not good. Parkinson's terrible. I know that. But Eddie's from Lafayette, made his way to Nashville. Oh, I love these people coming out of Louisiana, getting to Nashville, taking that soulful stuff out of Louisiana and bringing it up and showing it to Nashville. A bunch of them did it. Claude King, Wolverton Mountain. Man, he had a feeling. I've got and Johnny Horton. Oh, I've got a Johnny Horton story for you. I went into a cafe at the cafe at a hotel, and Luther Perkins was sitting there at the bar in the restaurant, and I said, "Hey, Luther, how are you doing?" And I'm going to talk about Johnny Horton right now for a moment. He said, "Kilroy, I am tired." He was working for Johnny Cash playing guitar, and unfortunately lost his life in a fire. But Luther played guitar, no kin to Carl Perkins. But Luther Perkins was a good guitar player and worked for Johnny Cash. Now, we all know Cash is a little bit weird type cat at those days, but he believed in reincarnation, and so did Johnny Horton. and Johnny Horton had all those hits and what have you. So they were good friends, and they kind of hung out together. But both of them believed in reincarnation. Luther said, I forget how long, that he said it took them to drive from Los Angeles to Nashville, but it was like 3 times longer than the normal trip, you know. I said, why did it take you so long? He said, because Cash believes that Johnny Horton coming back as a cow. I said, I know he believed in reincarnation, but why would Horton say, I'm going to come back as a cow? So every time that we passed a herd of cattle, that was before the interstates, you know, so you'd be on a highway and there'd be some cows across the fence there. He said, Cash would say, stop, stop, and he'd get out of the car, and he would say, Johnny, are you out there? If you're out there, moo, and let me know it's you. And old Luther said, I hope I never saw a cow again, because I know the next one we were going to have to stop, and Cash was wanting to see if Johnny Horton was out there. That's a true story, too. I'm not lying to you. Claude King, incredible talent from Keithville, Louisiana. I'm having a good time talking about my Louisiana buddies, and some of them I didn't know. Many of them are my dear friends. And I've left out some, I'm sure, unintentionally, because there's a lot of good Cajun music down there. All that area in Lafayette, New Iberia, I can't think of some other, Kaplan's got a bunch of them, yeah. All that area down there are just full of Cajuns playing the fiddle, and the main instruments of a Cajun band would be the fiddle and the accordion, you know. And you talk about having a good time. I mean, those Cajuns can outdo anybody in the world when it comes to having a good time. I had when I was on XM satellite radio, the channel there was Channel 13. I started that in 2001, and it was called Hank's Place at that time. And I had a caller that would call in, and his real name wasn't Charlie Brown, but he went by Charlie Brown. He was a truck driver, and he would call me every day or every other day. I talked to him often, became friendly on the phone. And I would, after he got off the phone, after I played a record, I'd come on there and say things about the people that he called in. And I said, yeah, Charlie Brown called in, and I said, Charlie Brown loves me. He would say, Beckman Chupi Patan. And I said, man, I know he loves me. I did this for a couple of years. So I'm doing a show, or emceeing a show at Willie's Place. And this gentleman from Louisiana that listened every day, an older guy, he came up and he said, Kilroy, come here. He calls me off away from everybody. And I said, what do you want, sir? I knew his name at that time. I've forgotten now. Gosh, that's years ago. And he said, that man that calls you, that says he loves you and says, Beckman Chupi Patan. He said, he's not saying he loves you. He's saying something else to you. And I said, you gotta be kidding. That's my buddy. He's not saying bad stuff to me. He said, yeah, he is too. He said, believe me. He's saying, kiss my you-know-what, you SOB. I said, no, not Charlie Brown. He wouldn't do that. But we had a good time with him. Well, I know I miss some people from Louisiana. Gosh, I love the talent that was there. You know something else I love? I love our sponsor. Our sponsor is Total Feeds, and that's plural. And the reason it's plural is Total Feeds provides feeds for so many species, including humans. Okay, you've got Total People. And I know people that are taking Total People, and they are really, really healthy, bright-eyed, and good-looking folks, okay? And then they have Total Equine, which we've been feeding our horses at for, gosh, Liz and I were talking about it when the good doctor said, yes, I will sponsor your show, Dr. Harry Anderson. They came up with all these formulas, and he had been with another feed company, I've told you the story before, and left them to start this whole deal because he thought he could produce better feed, and sure enough he did. But Total Equine, we're feeding our horses, that have been for almost 2 decades now, long time. Total Bull. A lot of these bulls that you see bucking at the PBR and at PRCA rodeos are on Total Equine. You see all those muscles and everything. Total Canine. Oh, dogs just blossom on it. They love it. But listen, go to their website, totalfeeds.com. In the meantime, this is Kilroy saying, God bless each and every one of you. Thanks for putting up with me. Hope you enjoyed the story on Louisiana Artist. I'll be coming up with more stuff for you in another show later. God bless you. Happy trails to you. See you down the road. Bring up old paint and saddle him up, and I'm going to ride out of here and drift. God bless each and every one of you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music. If you have any thoughts or questions about the content, email them. Kilroy Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. That's Kilroy, no S, Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. And don't forget to subscribe. Third-party use of any part of this podcast without the expressed consent of Eddie Kilroy is prohibited. The Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music podcast is a production of Eddie Kilroy.